Good afternoon, or should I say good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be part of your conference, and I will talk about coherence, resonance, chimeras in dynamical networks. So this is work done at TU Berlin in Germany and at the Collaborative Research Center, SFB 910. And it is work in collaboration with Anna Zakharova from TU Berlin and Nadia Semyonova and Vadim Anishchenko from Saratov State University in Russia. So let me start by briefly explaining what a chimera state is. A chimera state in networks of identical phase oscillators have been first predicted in the seminal work by Kuramoto and Battogtokh in 2002, and they have been coined chimeras by Abrams and Strogas in their paper in 2004. So if you have a network of identical phase oscillators, they may either perform coherent oscillations, so this is this phase variable which has the same value throughout space. Space is given by the network members or the network nodes, or they may be completely incoherent. And also, the state in between is possible, which is surprisingly spontaneously arising in this system of identical networks, where part of it is incoherent and the other part is coherent. This is a ring network, so we have periodicity, periodic boundary conditions, and this is called a chimera state. So today I will talk about a particular chimera state, and before I start with the model, let me give you some more motivation why this spontaneous symmetry breaking might be of interest, in particular in neuronal systems. There is the phenomenon of unihemispheric sleep, well known for quite a while. Some migratory birds and dolphins sleep with half of their brain while the other half remains awake. This is essential for dolphins, for example, so that they can still see predators, or for migratory birds who can travel for thousands of miles without resting because they take turns in sleeping with half of their brain. This has quite recently, actually, last year, been measured in the great frigate birds with some experimental equipment installed to their head, so that one could really monitor that for some period half of the brain is sleeping, half of the brain is awake, and after some time they take turns. Also, most recently, epileptic seizure has been connected with chimeras, and there is some reason, or there are some works that stipulate that chimeras might play a role as a mechanism for termination of the epileptic seizure, because they are a state in between complete synchronization with the pathological state during the seizure and the completely incoherent or desynchronized state, which is the normal, healthy state. This is work by Roskegel and Lehnert and by Amjeda. So I will use a model which is paradigmatic for neuronal activity, the Fitz Hugh-Nagumo model, which is a two-variable model with activator U, inhibitor V, and these are the nonlinear local dynamics with a cubic nonlinearity in the activator variable and this linear inhibitor dynamics. The crucial parameter is on one hand the time scale, epsilon, which is a very small quantity, and second, the parameter A, which is the excitability parameter, which determines whether the system is in an excitable state, if A modulus is larger than 1, or in an oscillatory state, if A modulus is less than 1. I'm here considering the excitable regime. Normally, if dealing with chimeras, one considers an ensemble of oscillators in the oscillatory regime, but now I will consider the excitable regime, where you can see the null lines of the individual system here and here. So the fixed point, which is the crossing point here, is on the stable side. We have a stable fixed point but a small perturbation will bring us to the excited state, and a spike is emitted, upon which the system slowly returns via the recovery phase to the fixed point. You can see this in the time trace of the activator, where the spike is clearly visible and the slow recovery phase. Now we will couple these individual elements, and basically between the two limiting cases of local coupling, strictly local coupling on a ring, and global coupling or all-to-all coupling, there is nonlocal coupling, where each element is coupled to p elements to the left and to the right of the ring. So this is just in between global and local coupling, and this is what I will consider. The parameter p determines the coupling range, or rather we will use the dimensionless quantity p normalized by the total number of nodes in the network. In my talk today, I will focus on the role of noise. Of course, noise has two sides, like this Janus phase. One side is that it's usually smearing out things, makes things less regular, and here it is of interest, of course, to investigate if chimeras are robust with respect to noise. And in fact, we have done some work showing that the noise decreases the lifetime of chimera states, so it has a negative effect which makes the chimeras less visible. But the question is, on the other hand, it is known that especially in nonlinear systems, noise can often have a constructive role. And our question we posed ourselves was if in the chimeras, in the case of chimeras, if noise can help to see chimeras. So in the following, I will give an answer, and the answer is yes, of course, otherwise I wouldn't give this talk. There is a phenomenon which we have termed coherence resonance chimeras, which is induced by noise. So noise in the Fitz Hugh-Nagumo model in the excitable regime can, first of all, excite the system, excite spikes, and for a single Fitz Hugh-Nagumo system, it's well known that the phenomenon of coherence resonance gives rise to most regular oscillations if we have a certain amount of noise. So no noise or little noise is bad. Too much noise is also bad, but an intermediate level of noise can actually enhance the regularity of oscillations. This refers to the optimum temporal coherence. But now we are interested in the spatial behavior, because chimeras are coexisting spatial domains of coherent and incoherent dynamics, and we are trying, or we will try to combine these two features. And in fact, if we consider the Fitz Hugh-Nagumo model, ring of Fitz Hugh-Nagumo elements in the excitable regime coupled in this non-local way with some coupling range R, so every element is coupled to two R neighboring elements, then we have this coupling matrix B, which combines diagonal coupling UU and VV, but also contains non-diagonal coupling, inhibitor-activator and activator-inhibitor coupling. In fact, one can parameterize these four A matrix elements of the coupling matrix by a single coupling phase, and it's in fact for the oscillatory elements, it is known that it's essential that this coupling phase is close to pi-half. So we have a predominant influence of the off-diagonal coupling, this and this element, B UV and B VU. Now what's new here is that we add Gaussian-wide noise with noise intensity D, and we consider the system not in the oscillatory but in the excitable regime. This is joint work which was recently published, and what we see is that in fact this is the space versus time plot. We have some incoherent domain where the individual oscillators spike incoherently. They trigger a excitation wave which propagates fast to the right and to the left on the ring, and as it propagates, it becomes more and more coherent. So we can clearly distinguish this coherent domain here and this coherent domain here. Of course, this is periodic. After all the nodes have returned to their rest state, after the recovery phase, another set of spiking, incoherent spiking, appears. You can see it here, and as time goes on, again, an excitation wave is triggered, which becomes more and more coherent. So we have this alternating behavior of the incoherent vision. This is seen more clearly here. This picture shows an overview of what happens for different noise intensities. So let's first of all discuss no noise. We just have a fixed point. So in a sense, we have complete coherence. With some intermediate level of noise, we get these coherence resonance chimeras. Now, in the previous slide, I've shown you a blow-up of this picture, where this was could more clearly be seen that this is incoherent, then the coherence domain, the rest of the excitation waves, and then at the antipodal position on the ring, another excitation wave is triggered, incoherently becomes coherent, and so on. So we have this sequence of coherent and incoherent domains. If noise becomes stronger, we lose the coherence in space in some part, so this excitation becomes completely incoherent in space, but we still retain coherence in time, temporal periodicity in time, and with much more noise, also the temporal periodicity is lost. Now, to see this more clearly, here we are showing the local order parameter. So the local order parameter for coherence of synchronization is 1, and for complete incoherence is 0. So you can see the yellow parts are the coherent parts, and here we have incoherent patches where the spiking is incoherent, and as you can see, it alternates in space. And this is the completely incoherent in space, and then again complete incoherence in space and time. So let me show you a little video which shows the different nodes. We have this green groove in the center, and we have this yellow groove on the antipodal part of the ring, and the yellow groove has started incoherently. Then as it travels, it becomes more and more coherent, and the green groove, as you can see also here, is quite coherent, and they come in last. The recovery phase takes quite a long time, so the question is, who will spike next? Now, surprisingly, it's not those who came in first who will spike first, but those who came in last. So you see the yellow group came in first, but they are not going to spike because they are making just this little circle around here, except from maybe one single solitary node, but the main spike is started by the green group. So now the green group is first, and it's incoherent. As it travels back to the recovery phase, you can also see it here, it becomes more and more coherent, and finally we reach the rest state again. So how can we understand this behavior? Well, the reason for this behavior is the coupling. The coupling is important in inducing this chimera-like behavior, and in particular the alternating behavior. As you can see here, the 4 contributions to the coupling for each element are plotted in this color code. So for each element I, we have the sum of the activator-activator coupling, the inhibitor-activator, the activator-inhibitor, and this inhibitor-inhibitor coupling. And as you can see, the most prominent influence is in this inhibitor-activator coupling. And the color code is such that if the coupling is positive, it's greenish, bluish, and if it's negative, it's red-orange. So what you can see at the beginning, just before a spike starts, we have a blue, dark blue patch, which means that this term is positive. So if you go back to the equation, it means that this term, which is the coupling, which I showed you, so this increases effectively the threshold parameter AI. So what happens in the phase portrait is that effectively for the nodes from this red group, the threshold is lower because the null line, this null line is effectively shifted to the left. So the phase point here, the red one, actually is already farther beyond the threshold than in the initial stage. And so it's easier for this node to start spiking. So that is why the group starts first, where this pronounced influence positive contribution of the coupling occurs. And on the other hand, for the blue group, which is node, for example, node number 1, we have no shift of the node line, so they don't start. Only after all the other nodes have started spiking, also here we observe a shift. The next question is, these coherence resonances occur in a rather small parameter range of the excitation parameter. And the question arises, can we increase this parameter range? And in fact, by adding a time-delayed feedback, we can. So what is added here is a time-delayed self-feedback to each node with delay time tau. And here the result is shown in the parameter diagram of delay time tau versus self-feedback strength gamma. What you see is that we have certain tongues where the coherence resonance chimera behavior is retained. Actually, these tongues here and here and here are, well, this one is centered around 5, so 4.76 is the intrinsic period of the oscillators without delay, so there is some resonance with this intrinsic period for the certain amount of noise which we have, and for 2t, 2 times the intrinsic period, we have another resonance. In between, we have times where chimeras do not appear, where we have either incoherent, completely incoherent behavior, or synchronization. The red one here is synchronization, and the stripes are incoherent. So there is some kind of resonance with the time delay feedback, and you can see that even better in the diagram where the delay time is plotted versus the excitation parameter A. So in a small range for excitation parameters A above the threshold and even small range below the threshold, and if we increase tau, you can see that this range is strongly enhanced. It's actually shifted and also enhanced. Okay, so what you see here that we get additionally an additional increase of the parameter range for chimeras. In fact, this is a new type of chimera where we have 2 successive incoherent domains before they alternate. So not every period alternates, but every second period. So we have termed this period 2 coherence resonance chimeras. And I'm not going to, I think I don't have time to discuss the reason, but in one word, the reason for this behavior is that now the delayed feedback takes over, and delayed feedback leads to the chimeras at the same position, whereas the coupling leads to alternating chimeras. So we have these 2 counteracting effects, and the question is, does feedback win or does coupling win? And every second time feedback wins, every second time the coupling wins. So I'm summarizing. Chimera states in networks of identical oscillators are interesting partial synchronization patterns. Here we have considered coherence resonance chimeras, which are noise-induced chimeras and which demonstrate the constructive influence of noise. And in a ring of Fitz Hugh-Nagumo oscillators in the excitable regime, we have observed these intriguing chimera patterns. Time-delayed feedback can control the chimera, so it can be used to either enhance or suppress chimeras, and it can even produce novel behavior like period 2 chimeras. So this is work which is recently published here, and let me finish by thanking my collaborators for this collaboration and thanking you for your attention. Thank you.